Andrew and I have landed with our bums in the butter. It's exactly what we've done. Instead of sitting at the Summerfeld Clubhouse, which is also very nice, we found ourselves here at the Oyster Box Hotel in the suite of Mr. Greg Bortz, who's the owner, one of the owners of Pomp And Power. Well, what a setting, what a venue.
It's a bit nicer than Summerfeld, yeah.
It is a little nicer than Summerfeld, but we still love our Summerfeld, and we'll be back there next week.
Good. Summerfeld's good, the breakfast's good.
Drifting in the betting, when I last checked, is Pomp And Power, but we've got Greg Bortz here with us, who, as I said, is part owner of this horse that runs in the Hollywoodbets Durban July. We're going to spend the next hour with him and learn about what makes him tick. Greg, how are you?
Great, thank you. Very good. Great to be with you guys.
Thank you for opening up your Durban home. You can say this is your home while you're here, and inviting us in such a delicious spread. Lovely to be with you, and we just look forward to the next hour, Greg.
Thank you. No, so do I. I've always watched your show, and I actually listen to it on when I'm flying. I download it off of Spotify, so it's an honor to be with you guys.
You see, people do listen. While the gentleman's flying, he downloads it and listens to it in the aeroplane. He could be doing his work, but he listens to our podcast.
True story.
So what more do you want?
Desperado.
No, he's not desperado. He knows a good show.
I'm sick for it.
Right, let's talk about... I'm going to ask you about your family. I want to hear about your kids.
Okay.
Tell us about Greg Bortz's family and your kids.
So I have 3 kids. Alexa, who's 24, who works in marketing. She lives in Miami, in Florida. I got my middle son, Judd, who's going into his final year in college in Dallas, studying finance. He wants to be an investment banker. And then my youngest is Cole. He's 18, just graduated from the American School in Cape Town, and he's heading off to college in Wisconsin, in the States. So all are basically have fled the nest at this point.
This beautiful sport, horse racing, where did it all start for you, Greg? How did you hear about it? Racing, I mean, tell us when and how.
Yeah, so I grew up in Durban, and I grew up in Morningside / on the Berea, where I had a view of Greyville Racecourse from my bedroom window, and certainly on race days I could hear Eric Denman and Trevor Denman and Craig Peters and what have you. I could hear the commentary. So that was that. And then I grew up, a friend of mine growing up was a kid by the name of Nick Sternberg, whose father is the late Martin Sternberg. Yeah. So Martin owned Spanish Pool and a few other fantastic horses. And very early on, he took us to David Payne's stables, and that was his trainer, was David Payne, and got to see his horses, and that was it. I mean, while I knew nothing from racing, having seen Greyville from my bedroom window and having gone to the stables and seen these majestic creatures, I was hooked from, let's call it age 9. I used my pocket money to take a 50-cent place accumulator at age 9. Gentlemen who worked for us used to go to the tote for me and get the bets on, and I was hooked very early.
And you were quite lucky that your dad was a bad golfer.
My dad was a shocking golfer, and he played at Royal Durban in the middle of Greyville Racecourse. I wasn't allowed to go, so every time that I used to go to the races, I used to duck and dive for cover, because it was an invariable that he would shank his drives and would be right up against the railing, So I had to make sure that I was hidden.
So you've walked, you've as I'd say in Afrikaans, you've trapped that golf course many times from a young age, and you've been around the race courses for a long time.
For a long time, and then I went to, so I was always interested in racing from, as I said, from when I was 9 years old, and that just carried on and on and on. And once the bug bites, as everybody knows, it's incurable,
Well, I repeat, it was you that said it.
African horse sickness.
There was. It was Greg that taught me that.
Yeah, I've had African horse sickness from the very beginning, and then I went to varsity at UCT in 1988, and I used to use winning form as the way I used to study form. And
there's an interesting story. Tell us more about winning form.
Yeah, so when I got to UCT, I was horrified to see in Cape Town that you couldn't get winning form. At the time, actually, winning form only produced winning form for Durban centres and for Joburg, but they never produced for Cape Town, and B, they never distributed any of their books in the Cape. So when I went back to Durban on holiday, I went down to Winning Form's offices. I knocked on the door and introduced myself to the 2 people that were in the office. One was Owen Heffer, and the other was Matthew Lips, and begged them to allow me to distribute Winning Form in the Cape, and as well as begged them to introduce a Winning Form for Cape Town. And that was the start. So I spent my entire varsity career basically in the employ of Winning Form, building up their Cape Town operation, delivering books, picking up books, and helping Matthew, launch Cape Town Winning Form. So
Yeah, and Greg was telling me earlier when we were talking that he only attended 2 lectures in his
first
the
and the
one
last.
and the last.
Yeah. True story.
And he still passed.
And he's
Still
still passed.
passed.
Well, he's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
supremely intelligent man, and we're going to
Yeah, yeah.
touch on his career in a moment.
Yeah.
But first and last. So we went to the
and
first.
last. And literally
Winning
went to the last to find out what was in the final exam, and that was it. I paid someone for notes. I used my proceeds from my Winning Form business
Yes.
to pay for people's notes,
that's brilliant.
which you had to do because there was no internet, there was no online,
Sure, yeah.
right?
Handwritten
And
notes.
everything was
Yeah.
hand noted. But obviously, so I found the right people. It's like you want to know who's making the pace in the July. You got to follow the right one, So I made sure that I paid the right people for the right notes, and that was it.
Brilliant. Let's talk then, because I'm dying to hear Gina's story, and because behind every good man is a good lady. But your career, how do you earn your money? What do you do?
Sure. How long do we have, Warren?
Only an hour.
All right. So let me. So I went to UCT. I have another passion besides horses. I mean, if you want to know somebody who's really gotten the raw end of the deal, I mean, it is me. Number one, I'm obsessed with horse racing.
Yes.
I mean, how bad is that? Second of all, when I was 6 years old, you used to go to the movies, and you used to watch. There used to be a supporting program. Now, for those listeners that are much younger, they won't even know that concept. There used to be I think it was called Mirror International, right?
Yeah, there was also South African Mirror.
And they showed an FA Cup final, okay,
Okay.
as a supporting thing. And that's the first time I'd seen soccer. It wasn't on TV at the time. TV hadn't even basically started, right? TV started in 76 or 75, whatever it was, right? And I decided I was going to be interested in English football. But I couldn't read at the time. So I got my mom to read me the names of all the teams. And I told her to choose which 2 she liked. And there were 2 that we liked. One was Nottingham Forest and one was Tottenham Hotspur. And she chose Tottenham for me. So that became my team. The following year, Spurs got relegated from what was then the old First Division to the Second Division. And the same year, Nottingham Forest won the league and then went on to win the Champions League. We got it completely wrong, and that was my start. So I mentioned that I've also had a lifelong obsession with Spurs. Why is that relevant for the story? Because after I graduated from UCT, I did business science and I was going to do a CA. I joined an accounting firm called Arthur Anderson up in Johannesburg, and I started my articles. I took the board, I passed the board. The articles is 3 years, so you got to do the board and 3 years worth of articles. I was 16 months through my articles. I passed all the board. All I needed to do was serve out the rest of my prison sentence, which was another 18 or 20 months. And then lo and behold, Spurs announced that they've signed Jürgen Klinsmann, okay?
Yeah.
Great German striker. And to me, that was a sign from God. I literally resigned from Arthur Anderson, Johannesburg. I flew to London. Okay, I got a job with Ernst & Young, but before I got the job with Ernst & Young, I went and bought myself a Spurs season ticket. I got a home and an away season ticket. I was actually the very first person in the history of Tottenham Hotspur. They came out with their home and their away season tickets that season. I was number 1. I queued up at 3 a.m. thinking there would be a line. Nobody showed up until 9 a.m. So, but that was me. I went to the UK and I joined Ernst & Young for the sole reason that I could be in the UK to follow Spurs. At this point, I lost complete track of racing. This was pre-internet, so I was now done with horse racing. I was on my Spurs mission, and I was now living in the UK, doing my articles with Ernst & Young in the UK, following Tottenham around the UK. And I finished my articles, this was probably about 1995, I'm guessing. I finished my articles, and I decided that I wanted to be an investment banker. And the problem was that the immigration visa I was on basically said in the UK that once you finish qualifying, you have to leave the country.
Okay.
No way around it. So I went to go see an immigration lawyer in the UK, and he said there actually is a way around it. If you can become the UK representative of a South African business, there's an exception there, because in theory, if that business works, you can be creating jobs for British people. So that's the exception. So I came back to Durban, met with a friend of my parents, a gentleman by the name of John Michelle, who's now sadly passed away. John had a business here called Conlog, which was a electronics business here in Durban, if you recall.
I do
it
remember
all.
the name, yeah.
But he said, Greg, I've got a local electronics business in Durban. I'm not opening up in the UK. I said, no. We're going to fake it, John. We're going to fake it. We're not opening a business. Just let me be your representative. So I went and I had my interview at the consulate, and I became the UK representative of Conlog Corporation. Get stamped in my passport, right? All good. So now I'm legally back in the UK, and I start interviewing, okay? And I get a job with UBS, which is a large Swiss investment bank in London. Like, this is it. This is what I want to do. I want to do finance. I got a job with UBS. Probably sitting with about £1,000 in the bank account at that point. Sitting with about £1,000. I spent about £950 of them at Hugo Boss. Bought myself a thick woolen pinstripe suit with a tie. Like, I was the man, right? So I walk into work day one. Like, literally, I don't know how it happened, but I developed like a swagger. I walked in, I was like Gordon Gekko. Like, this is like 95. These were heady days this was all happening, right?
So you walk in looking confident.
Confident, yeah.
You're confident, and you walk past the trading floor and you hear buy, sell, and I'm like, yes, I have arrived. I'm the man. I was projecting forward. What color do I want my Gulf Stream? I had it all. It was all playing out for me in my head, right? And then I have to go down to the HR department just to fill out the forms for like national insurance and health insurance and what have you. And I get down to HR department. There's a lovely lady there, and it says, Greg, may I have a copy of your passport, please? And she takes my passport to make a copy, and she's standing at the copy machine, and she just goes, uh-oh. Like, you don't want to hear that from the HR lady first day of work. I go, uh-oh. She says, according to the stamp in your passport, you are only permitted to work for Conlog Corporation. So she goes like this. So two things. Number one, unfortunately, you are dismissed with immediate effect. And I'll never forget my reaction, but I went, but my suit. My suit was the thing. And he said, second of all, we have to notify the immigration authorities. Within a week, my wife and I, as newly married, were deported from the UK. That was my career in investment banking lasted 3 hours. Okay, I had the suit, I had everything, the power.
What did they say? They had all the gear, but no idea. They were jammed up.
And we were gone. So we now had to figure out where we were going to go. Now, when you get deported, for those that have never been deported, here's how it works.
You can't get back in again.
They put you on a plane. The government put you on a plane, but they only put you on a plane to where you legally can fly. So we could go back to South Africa, or we could go to the US because we had just been there on our honeymoon and we had tourist visas that were still valid. So we decided to go to Los Angeles.
Okay.
That's how we got to LA. So we land in LA, and at this point, we have a net worth of $872. Okay, so we land 872. I'll never forget, that's the number, 872. And we go straight from the airport to an immigration lawyer. Okay. The cab with tip came to $30. So we get to the immigration lawyer, we had $842, right? Before he sees us, there's $400 cash up front for the consult. So I walk in there, my net worth is $442. Okay, these are scary times, but these are the defining moments.
Found a place to live yet. To stay for them.
Yeah. So, cut a long story short, he says the only way you can get legal is if you can work for a company that you worked elsewhere in the world for a meaningful period of time, because then we can do a special visa. So I started working at Ernst & Young again, and now I find myself being an accountant on 3 continents. I didn't want to be an accountant on one continent. Like, doing accounting was my entry into finance, but yet here I find myself now aged 27 or 28, working as an accountant now at Ernst & Young in Los Angeles. So I walk into Ernst & Young, they offer me the job right away, I get legal, and now I'm working there. So, but here's the whole thing. This is a bit of a crazy story, which is they give you a temporary visa while they're going to apply for your permanent visa. Now, there's this visa is called an L1 visa. So I get a temporary right away. So now I start working at Ernst & Young with this temporary visa, and then I get the forms to fill out for the permanent visa. Remember, this is just pre-internet.
Sure.
Okay. The first question is, are you applying for an L1A or an L1B? Now, I don't know the difference. So I called the lawyer, Ernst & Young's lawyers, and they said, no, an L1, you're L1B. Everybody's an L1B. I said, I'm curious, what's an L1A? He said, no, that's for like the chairman, the CEO, and what have you. I said, but what's the difference? He said, no, they are entitled to get green cards right away. So I went, thank you, put down the phone. I was like,
L1A.
screw this, man. L1A, you know? So I start filling out the form. It says, are you L1A or B? I go, A. And then it says, if you've selected A, skip to page 11. I'm like, yes, that's how I roll. I'm skipping this form. Now you get to page 11. It's like, describe your achievements. Like how many thousands of employees you manage, the billions of dollars. Now, understand that the only person that I'm senior to at Ernst & Young in Los Angeles is the mailroom dude at this point, right? But nonetheless, I'm telling the story here. I write this whole narrative like you would have thought that I hung the moon. Like I am the man, you know what I'm saying? So I get the form done. Okay, thankfully, this is pre-Google. That's what you've got to understand, right?
Yeah.
There is no fact-checking. The world's changed for those people that don't know what the life was like before the internet. This is pre-Google, right? So I get it done, right? And now it says you got to sign, but then it's also got to be signed by the next most senior person other than yourself, because I'm the chairman, obviously. Okay, I mean, okay, well, I'll just forge his signature, no problem. But then it needs the company stamp. I'm like, oh my God, like how do I get all the stamp, right? So I asked somebody, and they said, no, the stamp, it's kept in the senior partner's office, and it's used every time they stamp all the tax returns, right? But it's kept in the vault. Like the stamp doesn't float around, right? So I'm like, how am I gonna get hold of the stamp? So I start thinking, I'm gonna go to downtown LA, I'm gonna hire a safe cracker, I'm gonna have somebody break in. Like I don't know where I'm going, like in my mind, where I'm taking this thing. But anyway, the guy says to me, the guy sitting next to me, even though I'm chairman, I'm in a cubicle with 500 people. The guy next to me says, no, but next week we do all our tax returns for our clients, and every tax return gets stamped. So I come up with an idea. So on tax return day, I come to work at 4 a.m. I go around to everybody's desk. I take one of those mailroom trolleys. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And I gather everybody's tax returns, and they have a cover that says Ernst & Young. And I get those sticky things that say sign here, sign here. And I put them in there. And then I take my immigration form and I put it in an Ernst & Young cover as well, and I put it right at the bottom, okay? And I walk in there to the managing partner's office, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't know who I am. I've only been there for like 2 weeks, right? Sorry, what is this? Who are you? So I said, I'm Greg Bortz. He said, what are you doing? I said, well, I know it's tax return day, and apparently you need to sign and stamp all the returns. And my understanding is you get disturbed all day with people knocking on your door. I thought maybe it'd be more efficient if we just did it all at one go, and here 440. I said, why have we never thought of that? That's well done. So he starts signing and stamping, and I can see mine at the bottom of the pile.
It's getting
But
there.
I can tell
go,
that it's
boy,
different.
go.
Yeah, but I can see they're different.
Yeah.
Tax return with numbers, immigration form.
Yeah.
The only thing that's the same is the cover.
Yeah.
So I started thinking to myself, Greg, what have you done? Like, it's just so obvious. Unless he's suddenly blind, I mean, he's going to see that there's a difference. And I've got 3 more to go. We got 3 left. And I'm like, I'm going to have to say something like, oh, how did that get in there? And like retrieve the situation. And as that happens, the phone rings. I'll never forget this. It was a guy named Michael Eisner. And if that name's not familiar, he was the CEO of Disney at the time.
Yeah.
Sure.
Disney was Ernst & Young's biggest client. He had it on speakerphone, and Michael Eisner started screaming at him, you guys effed up the audit, I'm going to sue you. And I'm sitting in the room, so he doesn't want me to hear, so he quickly picks up the phone, and he wants me out of there. So he signs and stamps these things without even paying attention. And I grab them and I run out of there.
So then you became CEO of Ernst & Young.
I took my form, instead of sending it back to their lawyers, I took myself down to the immigration building on Wilshire Boulevard in LA, and I submitted my form myself. And 30 days later, I had an L1A, and 90 days later, I had a green card, and I resigned the next day. So now I'm a legal I committed immigration fraud, but this time I pulled it off because I failed in the UK, but I perfected it by the time I got to LA.
What a great story.
Yeah. So I'm now legal in LA, and I tell my wife, great news, we got a green card. She's like, couldn't believe it. Like, how? I said, you don't want to know, right? And then I said, great news, I've resigned. She goes, well, great news, I'm pregnant, and like, which was
Where
news for
we-
me, and we don't have any money.
And you still got $400.
I said, no worries. I said, but I'm an investment banker by training. She said, you work for 3 hours at UBS. Since when are you an investment banker? I said, no. I learned a lot in those 3 hours. I'm ready, right? So I contact all the investment banks. Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Credit Suisse, Lehman Brothers, JP Morgan, all of them. And either they don't respond or they tell me no. Because, in America, to get into investment banking, you've got to be an MBA. In South Africa, you need to be a CA. It's a very different mindset. But if you're a CA, in America, they don't understand. They think you're somewhere below street sweeper. They just don't get it, right? So no one would hire me. So I said to my wife, don't worry about it. I got this. So I took the very little funds that we had, and I said, I'm going to start trading from home, as if I knew what I was doing. And I went and I placed the trade without getting technical. I took what is called a futures contract, which is a very leveraged, risky derivative instrument to try to get the most bang for your buck, which can work brilliantly if it works,
Or you
and
can
go very badly.
Yeah.
The first week I do what's called going long the S&P 500 without getting to, I was having a bet that the market would go up. What do you know? The market went up, and I made $50,000 in my first week working from home. Now at this point, I am the man. It's obvious. I've got it all. I know it all.
You've got it, yeah.
So what do? So my wife was working illegally at a garage earning $5 an hour, right? She doesn't know I've just clocked 50 grand. So while she's at work, I go down to BMW and I spend 47,000 of it, bless my heart, on a new black BMW 3-8R Cabriolet. She walks in, I throw her the keys. I got this, okay? Like at this point I'm walking on air, right? Next week, the following week, I decide I'm going, oil is the play. Oil's going up, guaranteed oil's going up. Oil was $18 a barrel. I go long oil. Unfortunately, that next week oil fell from 18 to 12. By the time she got back from work, I'd lost to BMW. And
She was all of a sudden driving a Tata.
yeah, so driving a bus, and not only did we now have less money than we started with, we owed $12,000 because the trade-in value on the BMW just wasn't what it was. So she started screaming at me to go get a proper job, and telling you how I got that job would be require 3 more podcasts. So I'm not going to get into it. And it was, but I wound up getting a job at Credit Suisse, which is a large investment bank, a Swiss investment bank, but in LA. After I had squatted in their waiting room and wouldn't leave until I got an interview. Thankfully it worked out, got a job, and that was the start of my career. So I started as an investment banker in 1998 with Credit Suisse, worked there for 3 years, and then left to join Lehman Brothers, worked there for 5 years. So I did 8 years as an investment banker, and at that point I was ready to go on my own. So we now find ourselves in 2004, and I knew that having done investment banking for 8 years and advising others how to buy businesses, sell businesses, I wanted to do it on my own. So I raised a bit of money. I raised $10 million, which in South African terms may sound a lot, but in the context of the US and private equity, that's a rounding error. What can you do with $10 million? But to buy businesses. And so really, I said, well, how am I going to get any bang for my buck with $10 million? And the answer was, I need to buy small companies that are distressed, because that way you can buy a distressed business for $1. You can use your money to invest in the business. So I started off buying troubled, bankrupt, small companies, and that's how it started. So I went in and bought a bankrupt food business for $1, invested $6 million in the business, fixing it up, turning it around, managed to get it successful, pulled the money out, bought another one, and had gotten to 2007, And at this point, if you guys remember, 2007 was almost like the peak of the market. That's when the world was very frothy. And it just didn't feel right. It felt to me like the world was overheated. So I decided I'd rather be selling than buying. At this point, I had 7 companies in the portfolio. And I sold the entire portfolio to a bank called Morgan Stanley. And Morgan Stanley bought all those businesses. And that was me. I was cashed out in 2007, and then the crash happened. If you remember 2008, 2009, the financial crisis hit.
Yep.
And Morgan Stanley, bless their heart, had to get bailed out by the US government. And one of the requirements of the bailout was that they needed to get rid of non-core businesses.
You bought them
so
back?
I bought them back for $1. So sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. I was in the right place at the right time. And I never needed help raising that $1. I had that one in my back pocket. So bought them back and fixed again what had now become broken during the financial crisis, and sold out again in 2011. And that was it. And that's when I wound up retiring at that point. And that's how, at that point, decided, you know what, let's do something different. I said, how about we go to South Africa? So my wife, now my ex-wife, is South African, living in LA. As we had started making money, we brought all our families over from South Africa. So we had never gone back. We had never gone back from leaving in 94, never went back to South Africa. There was no need because family was all now in LA.
Yeah.
So our kids are full-on American, had never been to South Africa. So I said, let's just take a year off. Let's pull them out of school and let's just shake it up a little bit. You know, they're living a great life here in Malibu in California. Life's wonderful. They don't know from, you know, how the other half lives. You know, let's go on an adventure. And we decided to go to Cape Town. And that's how in July of 2012 we landed in Cape Town for what was meant to be a 1-year sabbatical. And here I sit with you 10 years later at the Oyster Box, having not gone back.
Yeah.
Sure. And that was the start of it. And then to tie it back to racing. Sorry, I know I haven't let you get a
No, you
question
must
yet.
drink. It's such an interesting story. Feel free to enjoy your hot chocolate. It's cold now, but enjoy it.
But so racing, I lost track of racing from 1994 when I left to go follow Jürgen Klinsmann in Spurs. That was it. And, you know, as I said, that was pre-internet. And then my life happened, and as you've heard, it was quite a busy life. And there wasn't time to... So from 1994 to 2012, think of it as almost like a Leon Schuster movie where he gets knocked out on the rugby field and wakes up 10 years later in the new South Africa.
Yeah.
I saw that one Leon Schuster.
Yeah.
That's me. I have an absolute gap in terms of racing knowledge from 1994 till 2012. When I came back, it was like for that year, I said, I've got to find a place to rent. We're just here for a year. And I found a beautiful apartment in Clifton that I rented from a gentleman who I didn't know. It turns out his name is Bryn Wrestle. And hanging up on the wall is a picture of a winner of Bryn's. And so I said to Bryn, all right, I'll rent this place provided you take me to the races. I haven't been to the races since 99. I used to be sick for it. And that's how it started. That's how I developed a great friendship with Bryn. That's how I got reintroduced to racing, and that's where it started.
And it just shows you, Andrew, while Greg enjoys his hot chocolate, it just shows you that once that's... what's that? A piece of a crumpet on my arm there. What shows you that once that... And we're not saying it badly. We're saying once that sickness, once you're a victim for the game, you always come back. You'll always come back. That's what's so beautiful about horse racing. The punting, the owning, just the industry. You just keep coming back for more.
Yeah, I think it's one of those sports where I find for younger people now it's become too complicated. But once you get into the mechanics of it, it's fascinating. And once it's bitten,
What is it
it's like rabid.
What is it that you enjoy most about racing? We sit here now.
Yeah.
Why do you do it? Because you're a man on a mission, and in a good way. And you've bought a lot of horses with Gina, and we're going to talk about Gina in a moment. And we know that racing is a game. We don't want to be negative, but we know that I've got faith in the industry. I know it's going to come good, but we're not in a great space. We're not let's call a spade, as you said earlier on. But what's your mission? You're now investing heavily in a game that's shaky. And what is it? Why are you doing that is the first question. And what do you like about the game?
So, by the way, the biggest challenge that we have in racing, I would tell you in my view, is we all know that once you've been bitten, you're forever bitten.
Correct.
However, we're not getting people coming in to begin with, which means we have dwindling levels of interest, and we're finding more and more older people who are long in memories, but we're not getting new people creating new memories, right? And so the absolute challenge that exists in racing today is how do you get the youth of the day of today interested and energized and becoming the future owners and the future lovers of racing. That is our biggest challenge. There's something so unique, as Andrew just said, about it, about the complexity of it. And I mean, I'm going to answer your question directly, but here we are. I'm sitting here. We got the July coming up this weekend. I could spend 10 billion rand buying horses and never have one that makes it into the July. That is what it is about racing. And then you can have somebody that comes along and buys a horse and it's Komatita. It is that unknown.
Yes.
That you live in endless hope with racing. You live in endless hope that you're going to crack that pick six, that you're going to buy a winner. That to me is the thing that makes us all love racing. You could have 150 to 1 shot in a race and you never know.
No.
And that old expression, if you've got a ticket, you got a chance.
Sure.
And there's never been more true than in racing. And it's that hope springs eternal within racing, which is why we love it and why we keep coming
So
back.
that old saying about a trainer who's never committed suicide as long as he's got an unraced 2-year-old in his yard,
Exactly
because you never
right.
know.
You just never know. So that is the best part about it. But then to answer your question about why and racing and where it's at. So just to finish my story in a nutshell, came in for a year and that was the plan. And during that year, I went to an auction. I figured I'd buy a horse and I wound up buying 17. And so we came to the end of the year and we said, well, maybe, I said to my wife, can we not just extend by another year because none of these horses have run yet?
Yeah.
And we were all happy, and so we decided to extend by another year. And at this point, my kids were settled at their schools in Cape Town. We were happy, but I was always going back, right? And then actually, I wound up getting divorced, which wasn't on the
Wasn't the plans.
Was it on the agenda?
Yeah, it wasn't on the agenda, but all's great. I have a wonderful relationship with my ex-wife. We're super, super close. But so we wound up getting divorced, and she decided that she'd rather stay. So at that point, I knew I was staying. I thought, okay, maybe I'll hang around for another year. I mean, don't forget, at this point, all of my family, my parents and siblings, they're all in LA. I moved them all there, and we're sitting here on sabbatical in Cape Town. I'm like, where should home be, you know? So as it related to racing, I always felt that I was leaving the following year. So when it came to buying horses, I was having fun buying horses at sales, but I was never serious about it. When I was approached about some yearling that was, let's say, a dynasty that would take time but would be a classic horse in time, I'm like, I don't have time.
Yes.
I don't want that. Rather get me something off the ready-to-run sale that's precocious, that will run next week, whether it be in Kimberley or PE or wherever. I just want to see my horses run while I'm still here. So I felt, as it relates to racing, as much as I loved it, I felt transient. It was a matter of time. I was always going back, and I loved it. And my motto was, I'm here for a good time, not a long time, and I was just having fun with it, you know. But things slowly evolved, and then we got to a point where I was definitely going back. I saw things on the horizon, financial things that said to me, we're going to have another crash, similar to what we had in 08 and 09. And I decided I wanted to be back in the US, and I wanted to capitalize on that when it happened. I was going to go back to work at this point. I'd retired from 2011. I felt like it was too good an opportunity. Could just see what I saw in 07, 08, I was seeing again. And built a new home in Arizona, and I was going to raise a private equity fund. My plan was to raise $1 billion to go big and buy some big businesses. I felt like some big business would be falling over, and I'd started fundraising and started getting in lots of money into the fund. And it was I started getting out of all my horses because I couldn't have a private equity fund and be involved in horse racing and all these various things, and I started getting out of it. And that's why my ownership, which was quite high, went all the way to very low as I was moving back to the States. And then while I was in the States, COVID hit and decided, well, I think I'd rather be back in, there's something I'd rather be in Cape Town and ride it out in Cape Town. So came back And that's when I came back, and that's when I decided, you know what, I don't want to go back to America. I like it here. And so that's when I refocused on South Africa. And at the same time, I met Gina, who we'll talk about, but Gina is sick for horse racing. I mean, so Gina's ex-husband is Kevin Lorena, who you may know is the boxer, the Lorena, Gavin Lorena.
Yes.
But even before that, you know, Gina's been, her late dad was into horses, so she's been around horses. She rides, she's mad for it, and it was just, she worked as an assistant trainer with Stephen Lorena up in Joburg, so she was just around, and we met. So now I'm back in South Africa. I've met someone that I care about, who's very into horse racing, and that's how I sort of refocused on racing today. Although just a quick little anecdote, a word of advice for anybody out there, that if you've got a few spare rand in your pocket and you just started dating some reasonably attractive woman who likes horses, don't take them to a sales. Okay, so we go to a sale. Okay,
Was your first date at the sales?
I was probably we've been dating for 3 weeks.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm still in the courting phase. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? I've still got to I got to act the part. You know. So I'm sitting there. I'm sitting with the Snaiths at the table, and the Snaiths always mark the catalog, and we're looking at what we're going to buy. And I'm obviously buying way too much, more than I should be, because I want to be the man, sticking up my hand, impressing this this woman. And then I see an item on a horse in the catalog, and its name is Gilded Gina. I'm like, how can I not?
Yeah.
So I say to the Snaiths, Jono, what are your notes on this one? He goes, 3,
3 out of 10.
3 out of 10.
Or
This
no
leg
good.
is skewed. I'm like, Jono, it's got Gina in the name.
It's got to be good.
It's got to be, you know what I'm saying? So not only do I ignore them, I buy the horse. I wind up paying, I think, 450,000 Rand for the horse, which was probably way more than I should have paid at the time, to buy Gilded Gina. Okay? Barely 3 weeks later, Gina and I break up.
Oh no.
So now, hang on. 3 weeks in, we had a 6-week relationship. We break up after 3 weeks. I now own Gilded Gina, which costs 450 sticks.
And no real Gina.
Okay, no real Gina, just Gilded Gina with three legs. Okay, so we assemble an urgent conference call. As Gilded Gina walks into the room, we had an urgent conference call. Myself, Jono, and Justin, and we say, what are we going to do now? We've bought Gilded Gina, okay, but Gina's left there. You want to come here for this?
Come on, Gina. Come and sit with us for a minute. She's not camera shy.
Okay, she actually is camera shy.
Come on, come and sit with us for a minute.
Yeah. So we say we can't keep a horse named Gilded Gina. So we promptly rename the horse Bye Bye Bombshell.
I thought you were going to call it Bye Bye Gina. No.
Bye Bye Bombshell. So
Okay.
wind up Bye Bye Bombshell. So Gina and I now don't speak. COVID hits, we're in lockdown. She's living in Johannesburg. I'm living in Cape Town. I'm dating other people. She's dating other people. We literally haven't spoken. 7 months later, Bye Bye Bombshell, but Gina doesn't know we've changed the name, comes out for its debut run. And I get a WhatsApp from Gina. Hi Greg, I know we haven't spoken in a while. Is that horse running today in the first race, Bye Bye Bombshell, is that Gilded Gina? I went, yep, one and the same. What do you know? Horse wins on debut 20-1. Wins first time out. We start talking, and that's how we reconnected.
What a wonderful story.
So Bye Bye Bombshell has now returned into the fray.
As has Gina.
But there was a horse that brought us back together. How's that? So
That is brilliant. That
it's
is
a
an
great story.
absolutely
And
phenomenal.
Bye Bye
phenomenal
Bombshell is
story.
actually a terrific horse. I mean, she really is great. She's really good. She ran in the Will Lavington, which
That's
we know
right,
was
yeah.
a very weak rendition of the Will Lavington. She certainly never disgraced herself. I think she got very unlucky in the run. She's won the Oaks already in PE, so she's got it in her black type. And we're going to have a lot more fun with her.
She's-
Anyway, so now Gina and I sort of started seeing each other again. Gina relocated down to Cape Town. We were in obviously a very serious relationship, mad about horses, and now Gina's got young kids, as I said, can't be leaving the country. Their dad lives here, so we are very much going to be here. Decided that I'm in a serious relationship with someone that is as mad about horses as I am, and that's why you've seen me re-engage.
Well, that
Yeah.
is absolutely phenomenally.
And then we
brilliant.
come round to Pomp and Power.
Now, but before we get to Pomp and Power, sorry, but
Yeah.
Leave my leg alone.
sorry, I'm just patting you on the leg to see you're awake. Race day nerves. How do you handle nerves? I mean, obviously everybody gets nerves, and how do you handle race day nerves, and how do you handle disappointment? Because we can't BS the public and say there's no disappointment. Of course there is, but we don't focus on the disappointment. But how do you handle
It's
it?
going to say, first of all, I get exceptionally nervous. Certainly in the bigger races, maybe not anymore in, let's say, the maidens. I still get nervous. I
Look
think
forward
it's
to
more
it.
forward, and
Sure,
I'm excited, but I'm not nervous. I can tell you for all of Pomp and Power's races, for Undercover Agents races, what have you, there was 100%
Nerves.
no question about it, and I love it. How do I handle the disappointment? That's easy. Like, I have to be honest, that's easy. I have never lost perspective. That is an honor and a privilege to be able to afford racehorses and be doing this game. And if my horsey doesn't win, big deal. Like, I really do see it that way.
Okay.
Don't
It's a
get
good way
me
to see
wrong.
it.
Pomp and Power doesn't win the July. It can run second, it can run last. I am going to be so disappointed. But I'm going to be over it like this, because at the end of the day, I had a horse in an amazing race that I've grown up being obsessed with,
Correct.
and damn, we didn't win.
Yeah.
But I have not lost perspective. I'm like beyond blessed that I can be squandering money on racehorses. It's a hobby. How can you be disappointed if you're doing your hobby?
Yeah, well, if you're not interested and it doesn't float your boat anymore, then get out. It's simple as
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
No, exactly.
Then let me start that again. Then, as Andrew said,
Yeah.
Pomp and Power. Let's talk about him. How did he come about? Who found him? Which sale?
So he was, like, literally, you ask me these questions. Normally the answer is, babe, which sale? She'll know. It was Nationals. It was Nationals, but during COVID.
Sure.
I wasn't there. Jono found him. Jono Snaith called me. I said, yeah, done. We'll take it. I mean, with a name like that, how can we not? Right? Because, I mean, you know, Pomp and Power, we in South Africa, of course it becomes Pomp and Power, right? Invariably, right? Then Jono calls me to say Marsh called him and asked if he could have a leg. I said, with pleasure. Love Marshy, awesome. And then Etienne Braun called, but he wanted to come in only if we changed the name. I said, tell Etienne to go pound sand. I'm happy for Etienne to come in. He's such a great guy, but I ain't changing that name. I mean, I bought the horse because of the name.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
Yeah, so, and that's how it happened. And it's such a great group of owners. I mean, Marsh and Etienne are just the best, and we have so much fun together.
Pomp and Power. Hey, you're right. That's a good. How do you choose your trainers, Greg? Because you've obviously you base yourself mainly with the snakes, but you've got horses with here and there. But
Yeah. It's changed a bit. So when I told you in 2012, when I was only here for a year, anybody asked me for a horse, I bought them horse. There wasn't a rhyme or reason behind either the horses I were buying. My only criteria were, are they precocious, will they come early? I supported everybody and horses all around the country because I'm here for a short period of time, and I wanted them racing everywhere. I wanted horses every day, basically. Where that's evolved to now is that now I'm staying here. I'm staying for the long term, staying in Cape Town, and so the Cape is my center, right? And so I'm really more focused. So the reason for the Snaiths is I'm focused on Cape Town. That's
sure.
number one. Number two, developed a fantastic personal relationship with Jono and Justin and their wives and Gina, and we just have great friendships, and so that's as important as anything else. Their quality speaks for itself. I don't have to tell you about their resume. So, but that said, I have horses with Brett Crawford in Cape Town, who is just absolutely outstanding, and Gina's late dad actually had a long-standing relationship with Paddy Crayer. So we bought some horses for Paddy, one of whom, our first horse with Paddy, is running today in Gina's colours, beautiful colours of silver and white, grey and white. So that's how those are trainers in the Cape. It's the Snaiths are predominantly my horses, and Brett's and Paddy, and then Lucky Hoodalakis must be one of my favourite people on this planet. He's fantastic.
You've also got one in Joburg with Paul.
With Paul, have Bold Ransom with Paul. Obviously, wonderful trainer, wonderful guy. Have horses with Ashley Fortune and obviously highlight of my week is always getting a voice note or chatting to Andrew Fortune. They broke the mold after they made him. You know.
Broke the mold after they
Yeah.
Mana, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
okay,
that's
so-
so predominantly with the Snates. So
Now, yeah, we're in the home straight. We're nearly done, and sure, we could we'll get a proper suntan if we go any more. But
I'm getting redder and
we've all
redder.
got businesses to do. But how do you keep young? You're happy to declare. I mean, I asked you earlier, and you're in
I'm
your
52.
young 52.
Yeah.
But you look 32. How do you do it?
He doesn't drink for a start.
Yeah, he doesn't drink coffee and he doesn't drink alcohol, so that's a damn good start.
well, what's the age rating on the podcast?
The age rating is like gambling, 18.
Okay.
18 and over.
All right. No, apparently you're only as old as the woman you're feeling is apparently how it goes. But, no, I mean, listen, I've been extraordinarily fortunate. You know, there's this expression: the harder you work, the luckier you get. I certainly worked very, very hard. Things worked out, and I've been based on that. I've never lost track of that. And to me, what the money that I made, the most important thing to me in life is not material things, but it's how you use your time.
Yes.
Right? And that's been the biggest benefit of having made money, is I've gotten to focus my time doing things that I love and enjoy. And I think that is the secret. So my biggest love, of course, is my kids. I'm a full-time dad. They're around the world. I go visit them all the time. I'm very involved in all aspects of that life. That brings me enormous joy. I have time to look after myself. I have time to enjoy the things that I love doing. And as a result of that, I hopefully that leads to a healthy outlook, and with a healthy outlook, hopefully a healthy life.
That's a lesson for me, which I have never learnt. So.
Well, never too old to learn lessons, brother.
Yeah.
Never too old to learn lessons. Quickly, the July. Okay,
Yes.
You've got other runners on the day. We've spoken
Yeah.
about Pomp and Power. Rattle through your runners and your thoughts and how you're hoping they'll do. Obviously, you're hoping to win everything, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's not as easy as that. But how they're doing? Who's running?
In the first race, we have a horse called Butterfly Beauty. That's very well. That runs in Gina's colours. It should be a big runner.
Yes.
Obviously, she's had to come down from Cape Town. She's simply travelled here for the race. Hasn't been here that long. She looks the part, but this will be her first run in the province. She's drawn on the barrier. She's drawn one, and she's a speedy sort. And I think she's a big runner. I think she's a very big runner. Then in the next race, which is the sales race, we have a horse called Pure Maverick, which won a Work Riders last time out. Seems decent, but I don't think. I think he's a place chance at most. Then we get to the Gold Vase. We have Salvatore Mundi. I've just gone blank on the horse that I think will win the race.
Blackthorn.
Blackthorn.
Yeah, Blackthorn. But Salvatore Mundi's got to be a runner. Got to be a big runner.
They ran a good race last time.
ran a good race
Very
last
much
time
so,
in
very
that
much
in the Derby.
The
Yes,
Derby,
the
yeah.
Derby, a
Derby.
little unlucky.
Yeah, and then we get to Pomp and Power, which, by the way, I mean, for what it's worth, any horse can win that race. Any horse can win that race. It's super competitive, so there is no saying that there's no guarantees with anything. But I can tell you, what I will say is this: for everybody that goes and sees Pomp and Power playing with the lead pony and messing around before a gallop as evidence that something's wrong or that he's going to cost himself the July, that's just bullshit. That's just absolute nonsense, right? If you see Pomp and Power go down to the start like a lamb, then worry. Okay?
Yeah.
This is how he is every second of every day. He's the naughtiest horse in Justin's yard. That's not changing. We've gelded him once, we're going to geld him again, and we're going to geld him again. That's who he is. Everyone needs to be aware of that. What people have rightly said, though, is if he could only settle, because he keeps throwing his head, he uses lots of energy. It's one thing to get away with it over a mile. You're not going to get away with it over 2,200. He can settle. He will settle. Clearly, pace is a factor. It's okay that there are people worried that will he be able to settle. We've done some things, changed his bit. He had a very sensitive mouth. We've done things. He is way more settled. He put up an outstanding gallop, but for whatever reason, people were only worried about before he started galloping. What they didn't realize is Pomp and Power, the naughtiest horse you'll ever find, had to walk from the beginning of the track all the way around to the 1600 meter mark or wherever it was where they started the gallops. That all that enabled him to do was he just wanted to bite the pony, lean on the pony, pull the reins. That's what he does. But as soon as he started galloping, he put up outstanding work.
Gallop, yeah,
I also, one well-respected racing scribe wrote that Richard Fourie must be kicking himself that he's on the wrong Snaith horse, and if he could have, he would have been on Jet Dark. Richard's not here to speak for himself, but I can tell you that's not the case. Richard is on exactly the horse he wants to be on. He's the best he's ever been. We've heard stories and rumors and what have you. At the end of the day, any horse can win.
Yes.
Any horse can win. I literally believe that.
The July is the July. I mean, people in the street come and ask you sort of things, and they'll say, I heard this jockey tell me that horse worked well at Summerfeld, and they said that worked badly, and the other trainer says this. That didn't eat up, and by the time you get to the race, you're so confused. But just look at the race like any other race. Yeah.
And it's the talk of the town. I mean,
it's good. It's great.
Believe it or not, I go to a barber. I do go to a barber for a shave on the sides, which I need to go and have before the July. And even the barber, I don't think his religious beliefs allow him to look at the July or anything, but he still says, he knows. He says, it's a wonderful week for you. I know you're involved in horse racing. You must be so excited. And this is the July. I mean, even he knows, So everybody knows about the Hollywoodbets Durban July. But Greg, wow, we wish you and Gina and your family and your friends and all that are connected to you. Thank you for, and it's not blowing smoke up. I know a lot of people out there, not you, say you mustn't blow smoke. Yes, I will blow smoke because we need you. We thank you. And for supporting the game in a big way, and for all the jobs that you create as a knock-on effect, and just all the best. And with your horse in the Hollywoodbets Durban July, all your runners, thank you for being so humble and just welcoming us into your home. It's an invasion of privacy, but wow, we've enjoyed this time with you. And
likewise.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks very much.
We could have been here for 5 hours, but we've got things to do. Before you unplug that, we can't let the viewers not know what you like in the Hollywoodbets Durban July and what I like. Now, they might not want to know, but we're going to tell them anyway. I need from you your first choice and a roughie. That's what I need from you.
No, well, I had to do my tips over early for the race card and things like that. Okay, so I tipped Linebacker. Okay.
Big runner.
And then, and I also like Pomp and Power. After the gallops, I thought that was the best gallop of the day.
Yes, okay. Somebody said to me the other day, it's hard to tip one horse. I like 5 horses in the race, but be that as it may. So you've gone Linebacker, Pomp and Power.
Yep, and Safe Passage, the other one.
And Safe Passage, those are your 3. I also selected Linebacker. Huge respect for Pomp and Power. And my other selection is the other Snaith horse, Hoedspruit. Mm-hmm. So my 3 are Linebacker, Hoedspruit, and Pomp and Power. Yours are Linebacker, Safe Passage, and Pomp and Power. Greg Bortz only has one horse. Only has one selection, Pomp and Power. But knowing 100%. With the gentleman that he is, if he doesn't win it, he'll be the first to go and congratulate the connections, because he's a sportsman and a businessman and a racingman of the highest order. From Warren Lenferna, Greg Bortz, Andrew Harrison, Gina Goldsmith, Tawanda Taravinga, his colleagues, the whole team here at the Oyster Box, have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful Hollywoodbets Durban July weekend. The fever, ladies and gentlemen, is beyond electric. Please get to Hollywoodbets Durban July Gravel Racecourse on Saturday. We'll be there and we'll be entertaining you.